Good morning. I want to introduce you to my sister in Christ, Reverend Dori Hudson, who has a passion for Bible study and teaching. And I'm so happy that she's come to share that passion with us. So over the next few weeks, you can spend the whole morning with us at Normandy. And Pastor Dori will be preceding the sermon, so you can find her Bible study there. Reverend Dori.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought I'd tell you just a little bit about me. I grew up in Carlinville, Illinois, which is just up the highway from here. And my father was a professor and chaplain at Blackburn College. He taught there for 30 years, religion, philosophy. But he also preached all around Southern Illinois as an ambassador for the college. And so I was the child who always wanted to go with him. And it was most logical for me to go into ministry after him. But if you remember, in the 1960s, girls didn't go into the ministry or think about going into ministry. So when I decided to go into the ministry after college, my father said, well, you know, Dori, women had just started taking up the offering. How long is it going to be before they are accepted in the pulpit? And so I didn't go to seminary as I planned. I went in other directions, but the Lord just didn't let me go. Called me 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. And so 30 years later, I entered Eden Seminary. And part of Eden Seminary was that I went to Ghana on a trip, and I came home from that trip saying, I cannot sit quietly in the pew anymore.
Yeah.
And I went to Eden Memorial United Methodist Church as a student pastor, and I stayed there. And Pastor Cherie was there. Not as pastor at that point, not even having been in seminary. She just was part of the congregation. And then I left Union Memorial and went various places, but I came back to Union Memorial when I heard that she was the pastor there. She and I know each other because I was her supervisor in field education at Shalom House, where I was the chaplain. Shalom House was a home for homeless women, chronically homeless women. And Cherie was my student in training at that point, so she and I have a long bond. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the book of Corinthians, and I'm going to talk about the whole thing, and then she's going to preach on it after and the same Sunday. So we're doing this the week before, but each week we will tape it, and if you have any questions or comments, please give them, and I can address those the following week. The book of Corinthians, the letter of Corinthians are letters from Paul to the Church of God in Corinth. Now, in order to understand a little bit about Corinth, the Corinthians, we have to understand a little bit about Corinth and its history and its geography. So, hopefully there are no Greek scholars here, but Greece looks something like this. Actually, okay. This is the top part. I'm too big. I'm going to start over. While I'm telling you this, I was in a doctorate program at Eden, and I figured out that I could go to Greece for the same cost as writing my dissertation.
Got a different color.
Different colors?
Doesn't show. Dark, black, purple.
Okay. I'll just go with that.
Okay.
And so instead of writing my dissertation for my doctorate, I had done all the coursework. I went to Greece in the Paul and Paul trip. It was a good choice on my part. Anyway, let's try Greece again. Okay, Greece is sort of like this. This is the top part of Greece. And you've got Athens right here. But you also have this bottom part, which is sort of like this. Okay? This is called the Peloponnese. And I'm not going to, yes, use my notes here. The Peloponnese. And the most important city in the Peloponnese is Sparta. Now this looks like it would be pretty easy to get around in, except there's this real problem. Right here is a piece of land, an isthmus, if you will, that connects this, so it's not really an island, it's a peninsula. But it connects right here, and this is where Corinth is. Now, if you want to go from Athens to Sparta, you got to go through this little spot, okay? Or if you want to go from the Mediterranean, and you've got a ship out here, and you want to go this way from the Mediterranean Sea, you can go all the way around like this to get to the other side. But there's a couple problems with this. I've drawn this jaggedy not only because it's like that, but also because this is considered the most dangerous place in the entire Mediterranean. It's about 250 miles to go around this, the Peloponnese, but most people took about 400 miles to get all the way around because they needed to get far enough away from the storms that gather in this area to be safe. It was said that if you're going to go around the Peloponnese, you better write your will and say goodbye to everyone that you love. So, a lot of places, a lot of people felt like it was really important to avoid this, and so they would sail in here, but there's that block there. What you gonna do here, okay? So you normally had to unload all your ship and then come to the other side and get a new ship and then continue. So the first thing that Corinth became noted for was shipbuilding. So you leave your ship here, you unload all the goods, you go up there. Now Corinth was settled. We have pottery going back to about 6,000 BC. But it's really around 3,000 BC that you have a major community there. And you can see why, because no matter where you go, this is how you have to go through. And one of the most important dates is around the 7th to 8th centuries BC. Remember, we're counting backwards. So, at that time, before that, Sparta is ruled by the military. Athens is ruled by the citizens. In Corinth, you had a city-state that was run by a set of aristocracy. And they elected two people. One would be the head of the army, and the other would be the head of the city. Well, there came a time when a person whose name is to write it down so I'm going to spell it right. Kypselus overthrew the aristocracy. He was well loved and reigned for 30 years and died in his bed, which was very unusual in the day and age for a leader to live that long. He was called a tyrant. Tyrant means that there is no law other than the person who is the head, the leader. But he was much loved, and his son, whose name is Periander, also ruled after him. And Periander was considered one of the wisest men who ever lived in Greece. So Periander decided, well, you know what? We need to build a canal through here. So they started to dig. The only problem is that there's a group of mountains, okay? And guess what? They go right through here. So they started to dig and pretty soon gave up on that. Instead, they built what's called a dialcus. I'm going to call it the slip road because what it was is they built a great big ramp up and then they built a great big ramp down so that you could take your goods over, but even more so you could take your ship over. We don't exactly know how they totally did it. They might have done it on rollers, but it seems like they just pulled it up and over. Because at one point, the original slip road was limestone, but at one point they put marble on it so that it would make it even slipperier. And you can still see the slip road there today. So this then became the way, and the slip road was used in an immense different ways, not just for merchandise and so on, but if you could get Corinth on your side, you could take your army through the slip road. You could take your ships through the slip road, and you could be from here to here and before your enemy could sail around. So having Corinth on your side was a huge advantage to anyone. And of course, Corinth got very wealthy because of taxes. If you were going to take goods from here to here, you had to pay the taxes. If you took your thing across the slip road, you had to pay the taxes. So Corinth became the key site until the Romans came. The Romans were fighting against to take all of Greece, and so Corinth was on Greece's side. But in 146 BC, the Romans came. They completely destroyed Corinth. They killed all of the men, and they took all the women and children into slavery, and they totally obliterated the town, destroyed it completely. But a place this geographically significant cannot stay just rubble forever. And so Julius Caesar, in 44 BC, and we're getting real close to Jesus, 44 BC is only 44. Julius Caesar built a new town here, and it became the center of the Roman government for the entire area. Julius Caesar also wanted to build a canal, but in the same year, if you know anything about history, 44 BC, it's also when Julius Caesar was assassinated. Yes. So, and then in 41 BC, Caligula came and he decided, oh, I'm going to try building a canal through here. Guess what happened to Caligula? he also was killed. So then we have Nero in 67 AD. We're now, Caligula is 41 AD. So the 441 was when Caligula. But then you have Nero in 67 AD. And Nero has 6,000 Jewish prisoners of war from 66, from the war of the Romans against when they destroyed virtually all of Palestine. He has 6,000 Jewish prisoners, and he decides he's going to start in 3 places. Here's basically the slip road. He's going to have some people dig here. He's going to have some people dig here. He's going to have some people dig here. So, guess what happened to Nero? He also was assassinated, and the plan was destroyed. But in the process of the digging that they did do, they destroyed the slip road. So this is the kind of the history and geography of the place that we call Corinth. So when Paul comes, and Paul gets there around 50, AD is when Paul comes. Now Paul was over in present-day Turkey, preaching, and he was called to deal with the Gentiles, to convert the Gentiles. When he had this dream, he dreamed that a man from Greece was calling him to come over to Greece. And so Paul came. And he came to Philippi, which is up here, and converted Lydia, who is the first Christian convert that we know of on the European continent. He works in Philippi for a while. He comes down to Thessalonica. He comes to Athens. Doesn't have much luck in Athens. And then goes to Corinth. When he goes to Corinth, he meets a couple, Aquila and Priscilla, who are, like Paul, tent makers. And this is a good place for tent makers because people oftentimes were going to go to an Olympic Games, for example. They would get their tents on the way instead of having to carry them with them. So he began tent making, and he also began preaching in the synagogue. Well, it wasn't too long before the Jews in the synagogue decided that they had enough of this guy. So, in typical Paul fashion, he moves next door to the house next door to the synagogue. It wasn't really a synagogue, it was a gathering place, probably a house. So he goes from the gathering place of the Jews next door to the house next door, where he just continues preaching. But in 52 AD, there's a new governor, Gallio, who the Jews decided that they would pull Paul up there and have him be arrested. But Gallio doesn't have any, says this sounds like an inter-Jewish fight, have nothing to do with this. So he goes back, he gets released, but he knows that his days there are numbered, and so a little bit later, he goes on and sails back to Ephesus, which is in Turkey. So how much time do we have?
It's 20 right there.
20 right there. I'm just going to read the beginning of the first chapter. And I'm reading from the Message. I think we oftentimes have a hard time with reading Paul. And Paul wrote in very colloquial Greek. And so, to me, it's easier to understand the colloquial English, which is not a translation, but an interpretation, in a sense. And so I'm reading from that. Here's the beginning. I, Paul, have been called and sent by Jesus, the Messiah, according to God's plan, along with my friend Cephas. I send this letter to you in God's church in Corinth, Christians cleaned up by Jesus and set apart by a God-filled life. I include in my greeting all who would call out to Jesus wherever they live, wherever they are. He's their master as well as ours. May all the gifts and benefits that come from God our Father and the Master Jesus Christ be yours. Every time I think of you, and I think of you often, I thank God for your lives of free and open access to God given by Jesus. There's no end to what has happened in you. It is beyond speech, beyond knowledge. The evidence of Christ has been clearly verified in your lives. Just think, you don't need a thing. You've got it all. All of God's gifts are right in front of you as you wait expectantly for our Master Jesus to arrive at the scene for the finale. And only that, not only that, but God Himself is right alongside to keep you steady and on track until things are all wrapped up by Jesus. God, who got you started in this spiritual adventure, shares with us the life of His Son and our Master Jesus. He will never give up on you. Never forget that. One of the things in this particular part of reading, you have the words Jesus Christ mentioned 10 times. The first 10 verses of 1 Corinthians mention Jesus Christ 10 times. He is the one from whose point of view Paul always writes. And the rest of the letter is all underneath that sort of canopy of Jesus Christ. He goes on and he talks about how they started pairing off. You know, some people say, oh, I was baptized by this one. Somebody else, I was baptized by this one. And they've broken into factions.